The most dangerous enemies often wear the mask of love. She handed over $10,000 to a stranger, begging him to end the life of the man who shared her bed every night. A quiet neighborhood, a broken window, and a deadly contract waiting to be fulfilled. But when the hired killer stepped through that window, he discovered something that changed everything. The target wasn't a stranger at all. What started as a simple murder for hire became a story of brotherhood, betrayal, and shocking revelations. This isn't just about greed and murder. It's about how destiny can turn even the darkest plans upside down. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about trust, loyalty, and the people we sleep next to every night. Stay until the end. The truth will leave you speechless. The window slid open silently in the darkness. Glass fragments crunched under Marcus Rivera's steel-toed boots as he climbed through the frame into the living room. His black hoodie concealed his face, and his heart pounded against his ribs as he gripped the 9mm pistol in his jacket pocket. The house should have been completely empty at this hour. That was the plan. That was what she'd promised him. But as he crept across the hardwood floor toward the hallway, something unexpected hit his senses. The rich aroma of grilled meat and the unmistakable scent of beer. Warm light spilled from the kitchen doorway, accompanied by the sound of classic rock playing softly from a phone speaker. Marcus froze mid-step, his tactical training from Afghanistan kicking in. Someone was home early. This wasn't supposed to happen. He pressed his back against the wall and peered around the corner into the kitchen. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. A man in a faded Marine Corps t-shirt stood at the kitchen island, flipping burger patties on an indoor grill with practiced ease. 2 bottles of Corona sat open on the granite counter, condensation beading on their sides. The man was humming along to an old Metallica song, completely oblivious to the danger lurking just feet away. Marcus knew that face. He knew that voice. He knew that stupid habit of humming off-key to heavy metal music. He'd heard it 1,000 times in dusty barracks halfway around the world. Tommy. The name escaped his lips before he could stop it, barely above a whisper, but loud enough to carry across the silent house. Thomas Martinez turned around slowly, metal spatula still in his hand, his dark eyes going wide with shock and disbelief. Time seemed to freeze as recognition dawned on both men's faces. Marcus? Marcus Rivera? What the hell are you doing here, man? The pistol felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in Marcus's pocket. His hands began trembling uncontrollably as the full weight of the situation crashed down on him. This wasn't just some random target. This wasn't some stranger whose life he could end for money and try to forget about later. This was Tommy Martinez, his best friend from their deployment in Afghanistan. His squad leader who'd pulled him out of a burning Humvee after an IED explosion. His brother-in-arms who'd held pressure on his wounds while they waited for the medevac helicopter. His closest friend who'd saved his life and whom he hadn't seen in 8 long years. Marcus collapsed against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, tears streaming down his face as the horrible irony of the situation overwhelmed him. "I can't believe it's you," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "I can't believe she wanted me to kill you." Tommy set down the spatula with shaking hands, his face draining of color. "What are you talking about? Who wanted you to kill me?" Marcus looked up at his old friend, his face twisted with anguish and disbelief. "Your wife, man. Angela paid me $10,000 to come here tonight and make sure you never saw morning." The words hung in the air like poison. Tommy grabbed the edge of the counter to steady himself, his knees threatening to give out. "Angela? My Angela." His voice was barely audible. Marcus nodded, unable to speak as guilt and relief warred in his chest. "But why?" Tommy stammered, confusion and hurt evident in every word. "We've been married for 6 years. She loves me. She tells me every day. At least. I thought she did." "I'm so sorry, brother," Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I had no idea it was you. She never showed me your face clearly. Just surveillance photos taken from behind, your work schedule, details about the house layout. If I'd known." "God, Tommy, if I'd known it was you." Tommy pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down heavily, the wood creaking under his weight. His mind raced, trying to process what he was hearing. His wife. The woman who made his coffee every morning, who kissed him goodbye before work, who curled up next to him every night, had hired someone to murder him. "This can't be real," he whispered. "This has to be some kind of nightmare." "I wish it was," Marcus said, wiping tears from his eyes. "But your wife wants you dead, Tommy. And she paid me to do it." For several long minutes, neither man spoke. The only sounds in the kitchen were the sizzling of now overcooked burger patties on the grill, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, and the distant ticking of a wall clock that suddenly seemed deafeningly loud. Finally, Tommy found his voice. "How much?" "Half up front. 5,000 cash. The rest when the job was finished." Tommy let out a hollow, bitter laugh that held no humor whatsoever. $10,000. That's what my life is worth to her. 10 grand. The number seemed impossibly small for a human life, especially considering they'd been married for 6 years. 6 years of shared dreams, joint bank accounts, and promises of forever. "There's more, isn't there?" Tommy asked, studying his old friend's face. "This isn't just about money." Marcus nodded grimly. "A lot more." Outside the modest 2-story house with its perfectly manicured lawn and prize-winning rose garden, no one in the quiet suburban neighborhood suspected the life and death drama unfolding inside. No one would believe that Angela Reeves Martinez, the 48-year-old woman who organized elaborate neighborhood block parties and volunteered at the animal rescue every weekend, had orchestrated an elaborate murder plot. A plot specifically designed to trade her husband's life for a massive insurance payout that would set her up for life. But what happens when fate intervenes in the cruelest and most ironic way possible? Angela Reeves had always been a master manipulator, though she hid it behind a facade of small-town charm and community involvement. At 48, she was 8 years older than Tommy, though she lied about her age when they first met at a charity fundraiser 6.5 years ago. She told him she was only 3 years older, and he believed her completely. Everyone in their social circle thought Angela was the perfect wife. She remembered every anniversary down to the day, threw elaborate birthday parties that became the talk of the neighborhood, and always had a hot dinner waiting when Tommy came home from his construction job. She sent him texts throughout the day telling him she loved him and missed him. "Did you know she's been lying about everything?" Tommy asked Marcus as they sat at the kitchen table, the forgotten burgers growing cold on the grill. Her age, her past, our finances, literally everything. To the outside world, Angela was absolutely wonderful. She organized charity drives that raised thousands of dollars, brought homemade casseroles to new neighbors within hours of their arrival, and sang solo parts in the church choir with a voice that moved people to tears. Their friends and neighbors constantly told Tommy how incredibly lucky he was to have found such a caring, devoted wife. "Last Thanksgiving," Tommy said, shaking his head in disbelief, "she organized this massive food drive for homeless veterans. Spent weeks coordinating with local businesses and volunteers. The whole community pitched in because of her enthusiasm. She worked 18-hour days preparing meals and organizing deliveries. Everyone called her an angel." Tommy pulled out his phone with trembling hands, scrolling to a photo of Angela surrounded by dozens of volunteers, her smile radiant and genuine-looking as local news cameras rolled and reporters interviewed her about her charitable work. "Look at that smile," Tommy said bitterly. "How do you fake something like that? How do you organize charity drives for veterans while planning to murder your veteran husband?" But behind closed doors, away from the cameras and community praise, Angela was a completely different person. Cold, calculating, and ruthlessly controlling. She managed every aspect of their finances and kept Tommy completely in the dark about their real financial situation. "I thought we were doing fine," Tommy said quietly, his voice filled with hurt and confusion. "Better than fine, actually. Angela always said her online boutique business was thriving. She showed me profit reports, talked about expanding. But 2 weeks ago, I found these." He pushed a thick stack of bills and financial documents across the table. The amounts were absolutely staggering. Credit cards maxed out at their limits, overdue mortgage payments with red, final notice stamps, and collection agency letters threatening legal action. "She has a shopping addiction she kept completely secret," Tommy explained, his voice growing stronger with anger. "Designer clothes that she hid in the spare bedroom closet. Expensive jewelry that she claimed were gifts from her sister. Luxury spa treatments twice a week that she said were business meetings. She spent everything we had and then borrowed against everything we owned." Marcus studied the paperwork with growing horror, seeing debt totaling over $90,000. Credit cards, personal loans, even a second mortgage on the house that Tommy had never known about. "When I confronted her about all this," Tommy continued, "she broke down crying. Swore she had a problem and promised to get help. Said she'd already cut up all the credit cards and scheduled an appointment with a financial counselor. I felt terrible for doubting her. Let me guess, Marcus said grimly. Another lie? All lies. Every single word. And there's something else. Tommy pulled out a folded legal document from his wallet. I found this life insurance policy hidden in her desk drawer. $1.5 million. I don't remember ever signing anything like this. Marcus examined the policy carefully, noting the dates and signatures. When did this happen? About 18 months ago, she brought home this huge stack of papers one evening. Said it was just updated insurance policies and retirement planning stuff that needed to be filed before the end of the month. I was exhausted from pulling a double shift on a construction project and just signed whatever she put in front of me. She kept rushing me, saying it all had to be done that night because of some deadline. She played you perfectly, Marcus said, understanding the full scope of Angela's manipulation. Tommy nodded, feeling physically sick as the reality sank in. I trusted her completely. Never questioned anything she asked me to sign. She used that trust to literally sign my death warrant. What Tommy didn't know was that Angela had been meticulously planning his murder for months, maybe even longer. She needed the perfect alibi, somewhere public, with multiple witnesses, when the random break-in occurred. She found me outside the veteran's halfway house 3 weeks ago, Marcus explained, his voice heavy with regret. Said she'd heard through a mutual friend that I was struggling after getting out of prison, that I might need some quick money. Offered me $10,000 to stage what she called a robbery that would go tragically wrong. Marcus had just been released after serving 3 years for assault charges stemming from a bar fight that had spiraled out of control. At 35 years old, he had absolutely nothing to his name. No job prospects willing to hire a felon, no family members willing to help him get back on his feet, and nowhere to live except overcrowded shelters with strict time limits. She looked so completely normal, Marcus continued, still amazed by Angela's acting ability. Like someone's favorite aunt or elementary school teacher. Drove up in this nice sedan, dressed professionally, spoke softly and politely. Told me she had what she called a delicate problem that needed solving and that she'd heard through the grapevine that I was exactly the right person for the job. Initially, Marcus had refused outright. He was genuinely trying to rebuild his life, to stay out of trouble and find legitimate work. But after 2 weeks of sleeping in different shelters every night and getting rejected from every single job application, fast food, construction, warehouse work, anything, desperation had begun to set in. The $10,000 would have meant everything, Marcus admitted. First month's rent and deposit on an apartment. Food for more than just one day at a time. Maybe even a chance to start over somewhere new where nobody knew about my record. She gave me this, Marcus said, pulling out a thick manila envelope from inside his jacket. The envelope was filled with surveillance photos, detailed floor plans, and extensive notes about Tommy's daily routine. There were pictures of the house from every conceivable angle, Tommy's work schedule printed out with shift times highlighted, even notes about which neighbors worked late and when the mail was delivered. She planned this for months, Marcus said, spreading the documents across the table. He pointed to observations written in Angela's neat handwriting. Garage window latch broken since October, easy entry point. Works late Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually home around 9:15 p.m., and bedroom TV visible from backyard. Can confirm when he's asleep. The surveillance photos showed Tommy from behind in various locations, getting into his pickup truck in the driveway, walking into the construction company office, mowing their front lawn on Saturday mornings, even pumping gas at the station near his work. Angela had been systematically stalking her own husband for months. How long was she watching me like this? Tommy asked, disturbed by the extent of the surveillance. Marcus checked the timestamps on various photos. Based on these dates, at least 4 months of active surveillance. But some of these notes suggest she'd been observing your patterns even longer than that. The day before the planned murder, Marcus had met Angela at a parking garage downtown to collect the first payment, $5,000 in crisp $100 bills. He'd used some of that money to buy the pistol from a dealer he'd known before his incarceration, hating himself for crossing that line but seeing no other option. The plan was simple, Marcus said, his voice breaking with emotion. Break in through the garage window, make it look like a random burglary, then eliminate the homeowner when he supposedly fought back and surprised me. She even specified what kind of weapon to use and where I should shoot to make it look realistic. He placed the 9mm pistol on the table between them, the black metal seeming to absorb the kitchen light. Tommy stared at it, the reality of how incredibly close he'd come to death finally hitting him with full force. Tommy reached over and covered the gun with a kitchen towel, as if hiding it from sight could somehow erase how close they'd both come to an unthinkable tragedy. You know what's really crazy? Tommy said, his voice filled with a mixture of amazement and grief. Yesterday, I was feeling sorry for myself about overtime stress and some bills that needed paying. I had absolutely no idea that my own wife was actively planning to have me murdered for insurance money. If that's not divine intervention, I honestly don't know what is, Marcus replied. What are the odds that out of everyone in this entire city, she would pick me? Her husband's old military buddy? The weight of their near tragedy hung heavily in the air between them. Slowly, they began sharing memories that had sustained them through the darkest moments of their deployment, the camaraderie in their unit, the IED explosion that had nearly killed them both, the promise they'd made in that field hospital to always watch each other's backs no matter what. Tommy pulled out his worn leather wallet and carefully retrieved a faded photograph showing two young soldiers in desert camouflage uniforms, their arms around each other's shoulders, grinning widely despite the harsh conditions and constant danger surrounding them. I've carried this picture for 8 years, Tommy said, his voice thick with emotion. Through everything that's happened since we got back, I never forgot my brother. Marcus stared at the photograph, overwhelmed by memories and emotions he tried to bury. I can't believe that after all this time, after everything we've both been through, it took your wife trying to kill you for us to find each other again. Maybe it wasn't just coincidence, Tommy said quietly, looking at his old friend with something approaching wonder. Maybe something bigger than both of us was working to protect us. Marcus nodded slowly, feeling something shift inside his chest. Maybe you're right. They sat in contemplative silence for a few moments, the magnitude of what had almost happened settling over them like a heavy blanket. Then Tommy's expression began to change, his grief and shock hardening into something more determined. She doesn't know that we know each other, does she? Tommy asked. Absolutely not. I used the name Mike when I met with her. She just called me Em in all her messages. Then she has no idea that her perfect plan has completely fallen apart, Tommy said slowly, his voice gaining strength. She's probably sitting somewhere right now, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for you to send confirmation that the job is finished. Marcus pulled out a cheap burner phone that Angela had given him specifically for this job. She insisted I use this to contact her. Told me to send one text when I got inside the house and another when everything was completed. The message history showed only one brief exchange from earlier that evening. I'm inside. The reply had come back within minutes, perfect. Make it messy like we discussed. Text me when done. We need solid evidence, Tommy said, his mind now working strategically. Something concrete that the police can use to put her away for a very long time. I already have the money she paid me and all her written instructions, Marcus said. But we need more than that. We need her to confess. We need her to admit out loud what she planned to do. Tommy nodded grimly, a plan beginning to form in his mind. I think I know exactly how we can make that happen. At 8:15 p.m., the sound of Angela's key in the front door lock echoed through the house. Her high heels clicked confidently across the hardwood entryway as she entered, completely unaware that her carefully orchestrated plan had gone catastrophically wrong. Honey, I'm home, she called out cheerfully, her voice carrying the perfect tone of a loving wife returning from a long day at work. Of course, she wasn't expecting her husband to answer. She was expecting to find his body and then call 911 in hysterical tears. Tommy glanced at Marcus and quickly started the voice recording app on his smartphone, placing it discreetly on the table. In the kitchen, babe. I made some burgers and grabbed a couple of beers. Come join us. The clicking footsteps hesitated for just a moment. Angela had clearly caught the word, us, then continued toward the kitchen. When she walked through the doorway, her practiced smile was already perfectly in place, the expression of a devoted wife ready to greet her beloved husband after another day apart. But when she saw Marcus sitting casually at the kitchen table with Tommy, both men holding beer bottles and looking completely relaxed, her carefully maintained facade cracked like thin ice. Her face went completely white with shock, and her expensive leather purse tumbled from her suddenly nerveless fingers, hitting the tile floor with a loud thud. What's happening here? She stammered, her eyes darting frantically between the two men as her mind raced to process this impossible scenario. Tommy stood up and pulled out her usual chair with exaggerated politeness. Angela, sweetheart, you're never going to believe this incredible coincidence. This is my old Marine buddy Marcus from Afghanistan. We just randomly ran into each other today after all these years. Isn't that amazing? Angela remained frozen in the doorway, staring at Marcus like she was seeing a ghost. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the terror in her eyes. We've been catching up all evening, sharing war stories and reminiscing about old times, Tommy continued, his voice maintaining a tone of casual normalcy that made the situation even more surreal. Marcus here just came into some money recently. Got himself a really interesting job opportunity. Marcus raised his beer bottle in a mock toast, his eyes never leaving Angela's face. Yeah, business has been really good lately. Really, really good. Steady work, good pay. Can't complain. Angela's hand went instinctively to her throat, a nervous gesture she'd had since childhood. I don't understand what's going on here. Sit down, Angela, Tommy said, and now his tone carried an undertone of steel that she'd never heard before. We need to have a serious conversation. She sat down stiffly in the offered chair, every muscle in her body tense with barely controlled fear. Sweat was beginning to bead on her forehead despite the air conditioning. You look like you've just seen a ghost, Marcus observed, his voice calm and conversational. Is something wrong? You seem really upset about something. I wasn't expecting company tonight, she managed to say, trying desperately to regain her composure and figure out what had gone wrong with her plan. Tommy placed his phone on the table, the screen clearly visible and the recording app's red light blinking steadily. That's really funny, Angela, because Marcus tells me that you two have already met before tonight. Her eyes widened in panic, and she could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I've never seen this man before in my entire life. Come on now, Angela, Marcus said with mock disappointment. Don't be like that. Outside the Veterans Halfway House 3 weeks ago? The $10,000 job offer? The very detailed instructions about making it look like a robbery gone wrong? He's lying, she said quickly, her voice rising with desperation. I swear to you, Tommy, I have never seen this man before. He's obviously some kind of criminal trying to cause trouble for our family. Marcus reached into his jacket and slowly pulled out the thick manila envelope, placing it on the table and spreading out its contents with deliberate care. Then how exactly do I have all of these? Your handwriting describing the house layout in detail. Surveillance photographs that you personally took of Tommy. Even a copy of that life insurance policy that you tricked him into signing. Angela's face contorted with a mixture of rage and desperation as she realized her perfect plan was unraveling completely. You were supposed to finish the job, she screamed at Marcus, all pretense of innocence abandoned. It was one simple task. How could you possibly screw up something so straightforward? And there it is, Tommy said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of sadness and vindication. Finally, the truth. Realizing the magnitude of her mistake, Angela immediately tried to backtrack, her expression shifting back to wide-eyed innocence. That's not what I meant. You're twisting my words. We heard exactly what you meant, Tommy interrupted, his voice now hard as granite. Finally, after 6 years of lies, we're hearing the truth. Marcus leaned forward across the table, his voice taking on an interrogator's tone. Why don't you tell Tommy about the $1.5 million, Angela? Tell him about how you planned to play the grieving widow at his funeral. Tell him about the shopping sprees you were planning with his life insurance money. For a long moment, Angela said absolutely nothing, her mind racing as she calculated her remaining options. Then, like a mask being torn away, her face completely changed. The pretend kindness and fake warmth vanished entirely, replaced by cold, calculating hatred that was shocking in its intensity. You have no idea what it's like, she hissed at Tommy, her voice dripping with venom. You have no idea what it's like watching your life waste away in this boring house with you and your pathetic dreams and your minimum wage construction job. So you decided the solution was to have me murdered? Tommy asked, his voice breaking with hurt and disbelief. It wasn't personal, she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. This was business. Pure business. $1.5 million of business that would have set me free from this suffocating life. And you picked exactly the wrong person for the job, Marcus said with grim satisfaction. Angela turned her venomous glare on him, her mask now completely gone. Obviously I did. I should have known better than to trust some worthless ex-convict to handle something this important. I should have found a real professional. Well, you're lucky that you made that mistake, Marcus replied calmly. Because now instead of becoming a murderer, I get to help put you in prison where you belong. Put me in prison. Angela laughed, a chilling sound completely devoid of humor. Really? And who exactly is going to believe this ridiculous story? An ex-convict and a construction worker against a respected businesswoman with no criminal record? Who do you honestly think the police are going to believe? Tommy held up his smartphone, the recording app still running and capturing every word. Actually, Angela, we won't need anyone to just take our word for it. Everything you've said tonight has been recorded." The color drained completely from Angela's face as the implications hit her. "Plus all the physical evidence that Marcus collected," Tommy added. "The money you paid him, the detailed surveillance notes in your handwriting, the text messages, the photographs. It's all evidence of premeditated murder for hire." Suddenly, Angela's expression changed once again. Tears filled her eyes and her face softened into a look of desperate, pleading vulnerability. Another mask, another performance. "Tommy, baby, please," she sobbed, reaching across the table for his hand with trembling fingers. "This isn't what it looks like at all. I swear to you, I was just testing him. I wanted to see if he would actually try to hurt you so I could report him to the police. I was trying to protect you." Tommy pulled his hand away from her reach, his expression hard and unforgiving. "Stop it, Angela. Just stop. The performance is over. I see you now. I see who you really are. But I love you," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks in what appeared to be genuine anguish. "Everything I've ever done has been for us. For our future together. You tried to have me murdered," Tommy said incredulously. "How exactly was that for our future together? I wasn't really going to go through with it," she insisted desperately. "I swear on my mother's grave, I was going to call it off at the last minute. This was all just a test." Angela's eyes suddenly darted toward the kitchen doorway, and Marcus could see her calculating whether she could make a run for it. But before she could move, Tommy spoke again. "Don't even think about trying to run, Angela. I called the police 20 minutes ago. They're already on their way." As if summoned by his words, the distant wail of sirens could be heard approaching their neighborhood, growing steadily louder. Angela's tears vanished instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. Her face hardened into an expression of pure, cold hatred. "You'll both regret this," she said, her voice low and menacing. "Both of you." Nobody crosses Angela Reeves and walks away unscathed. "I have connections you can't even imagine." "Looks like we just did cross you," Marcus replied calmly. "And we're walking away just fine." The sirens grew deafeningly loud as multiple police cars surrounded the house. Red and blue light strobed through the kitchen windows, painting the walls in alternating pulses of color. "It's over, Angela," Tommy said with finality. "Your game is over." Within minutes, police officers flooded into the kitchen, finding a woman in handcuffs screaming threats and obscenities while two men sat calmly with mountains of evidence spread across the table between them. Detective Sarachin, a 20-year veteran of the police force, arrived 30 minutes later to review the case. Even with her extensive experience in violent crime, she seemed genuinely amazed by what she found. "In all my years on the force," Detective Chin said, shaking her head as she examined the evidence, "I have never seen a case this thoroughly documented." She basically created a complete instruction manual for her own prosecution. The recorded confession alone would have been enough to secure a conviction, but combined with the surveillance photos, written plans, financial records, and witness testimony, the case was absolutely airtight. Angela's expensive defense attorney tried every strategy he could think of. He attempted to paint Marcus as an unreliable witness due to his criminal record, argued that the recorded confession was obtained under duress, and even suggested that the whole thing was an elaborate setup orchestrated by Tommy to frame his innocent wife. None of it worked. The evidence was simply too overwhelming. When the case went to trial 6 months later, it took the jury less than 2 hours to reach a unanimous guilty verdict on charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and solicitation of murder for hire. Faced with the possibility of life in prison, Angela finally accepted a plea deal in exchange for her cooperation and testimony about her methods. She was sentenced to 18 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 12 years. As she was led away in shackles, Angela turned back to look at Tommy one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, no regret for what she had tried to do. Only cold, calculating anger at being caught. "This isn't over," she mouthed silently. But it was over. Finally and completely over. Marcus, true to the promise he'd made in that kitchen, cooperated fully with the investigation and testified honestly about everything that had happened. In exchange for his testimony and his crucial role in preventing a murder, the district attorney worked out a deal that resulted in probation instead of additional prison time. Second chances in life are incredibly rare, the judge told Marcus during his sentencing hearing. "You've been given something precious. Make this one count." Marcus looked over at Tommy, who was sitting in the courtroom gallery nodding encouragingly, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. "Hope." "I will, Your Honor." I promise you that. With Tommy's help and recommendation, Marcus found steady employment at the construction company where Tommy worked. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and it paid enough for him to rent a small apartment and begin rebuilding his life from the ground up. Tommy sold the house where he lived with Angela, unable to bear the memories of deception that seemed to lurk in every room. He moved into a smaller place closer to work and began the long process of paying off the debts that Angela had hidden from him for so long. The life insurance policy was canceled immediately, and the insurance company launched their own investigation into Angela's activities. They eventually filed additional civil charges against her for insurance fraud. Most surprisingly of all, two Marine brothers who had saved each other's lives in a war zone had found each other again, brought together by the very plan that was meant to destroy one of them forever. "You know," Tommy said one evening as they sat on his new apartment's balcony, sharing a beer and watching the sunset, "sometimes I think about how different things could have been if you hadn't recognized me, if I hadn't been home early that night, if she'd chosen someone else." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I think about that too. But maybe all those things happened for a reason. Maybe we were meant to find each other again, even if it took something this crazy to make it happen." "Maybe you're right," Tommy agreed. "Maybe something bigger than both of us was watching out for us." They sat in comfortable silence, two men who had survived war, betrayal, and nearly unthinkable tragedy, grateful to be alive and to have their brotherhood restored. Angela Reeves Martinez had thought she was the master of manipulation, the perfect planner who could orchestrate the ideal murder. A loving wife facade hiding the heart of a cold-blooded killer. She chose a desperate veteran to do her dirty work, never imagining that fate would deal the ultimate wild card, a friendship forged in combat, strong enough to survive 8 years of separation and the ultimate test of loyalty. In the end, her perfect plan became the very thing that saved Tommy's life and brought two brothers back together. If this incredible true crime story shocked you as much as it did us here at True Crime Journal, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest cases. Share this video with anyone who loves true crime stories with unbelievable twists and turns. Tell us in the comments what surprised you most about this case. Was it Angela's calculated deception spanning months of planning? Marcus's life-changing decision to choose loyalty over money? Or the absolutely incredible coincidence that brought two Marine veterans back together at the most crucial moment possible? Remember, sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the people we trust most, the ones who share our beds and our lives, are capable of unthinkable betrayal. Thanks for watching True Crime Journal. Until next time, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in our next case.